When you're finished with the drawing, pre-mix your paints that you want to use in the first step. And then, after you've got them mixed, pre-wet your paper very well. Be sure your paper is elevated in the back. I use my masking tape to just elevate it a little bit. The reason you do that is so that your paint will run down. It makes it flow better and you can get a nicer blend. Now that the rose is done, I'm going to put the yellow in and bring it up to the rose color and get a nice conversion so there's a nice blend. So here I wanted to mix up some grayish purple, and I added some of the yellow into the purple to tone it down a little bit. Adding a little bit of green to bring some more of the trees in more to the foreground. And I'm continuing on here to bring the color on up to the top of this little mass of trees, adding green into it again to bring the warmth into the foreground, and softening the bottom edge. Under what I'm doing when I reach up there, I'm blotting, using a blotter to take off some of the excess paint on my brush. And that's it. More green, warmth on that side, and adding a warmer yellow because that's my side where I want to have a little bit more warmth in the grove of trees. Softening the bottom edge and adding some more dark to give a little bit more depth. This is a speeded up version. I'm not painting this fast. It's actually going quite fast. This whole video took about 25 minutes, and it's the first time I've done this, so room for improvement. In this next part, I should have gone ahead and softened the bottom edge, but I neglected to do that, and I catch it a little bit later. And right here's where I should have gone ahead and softened. Instead, I went to the left side and continued building up my shapes. Putting some color into the water area just to give it a little bit more form, a little more shape. A dark sky reflects lighter in the water. A light sky looks darker in the water. Putting more color into the sides of the bank using my 1-inch flat brush, which I use a lot of. And here I'm putting a little bit too much color down there in that one corner, so I'm going to wipe it off with a wet brush. I wipe it off, and I can take it off because it's all transparent watercolor. You can get it almost back to the white of the paper, unless you've got a staining watercolor, which these are not staining watercolors. For the majority of this painting, I am using a 1-inch flat brush. And I like to use the 1-inch flat for a lot of things because you can get nice sharp edges. If you use dry brush technique, you can make some grassy areas, some wispy areas. You can soften edges with it. And I'm just continuing here to build up a little bit more in the foreground to give it just a little bit more depth. I switched over to a 1/2 inch flat brush, and now I've picked up the 1 inch flat brush back again. And it's kind of like my go-to brush. So then I'm getting ready to soften this area where I forgot to do it and I got carried away and didn't finish that one side. So I'm softening this to go ahead and add some more land shapes into the foreground, just so that it gives my painting a little bit more depth and so that it doesn't look flat. Anytime you can add a little bit more color in certain areas, just gives it a little bit more character and a little bit more energy. The dark green is made with sap green, a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt sienna. Depending on if you want it a little bit warmer, put the burnt sienna in it. If you want it a little cooler, you add a little bit more of the ultramarine. Putting some color into the water. You don't want it too light. And the color is made with cobalt blue and permanent rose. Adding a little bit of land mass in here, just to add a little bit more interest. Looks like I'm using some violet. Fan brush to give a little texture for any foreground grasses. And now I'm getting ready to use the rigger brush to put some kind of dead trees in there, just some more shapes. Combination of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Ultramarine blue and burnt sienna makes a nice brown. And I'm just trying to get a little bit of a dead looking tree. And eventually I make that tree come down a little bit farther in the front. Continuing and adding a little bit of green there just to change the color up a little bit. Constantly changing color. Don't want to use the same color all over the place. I like to mix it up a little bit. One of my teachers told me that when you paint, you should, if you go 1 inch, change your color and mixture on your brush. So if you've got a green, add something else to it 1 inch farther from it, and then it'll just give it some variety and interest. The tip of the brush is used here just to bring those little spiky limbs off to the side. Putting another color next to the paint on your paper, it allows your colors to marry and mix together by themselves so that you don't have to mix it on your palette. And now I'm just finishing up some of these trees, trying to put a little bit of a, I don't know, a pine right in there or something like that. Putting another darker color along the edge of the painting to keep the person's eyes inside into the painting rather than letting it drift out. And I'm bringing the base of this tree, the tree trunk, down a little bit and putting a little bit of the lavender color into the bottom. I don't want my tree to look like it's floating halfway up the painting, so I'm just grounding it down there. Adding some more of the purple and some pinks to reflect some of the sky, carrying it along the edge of the bank. Then I realized I should have put a little bit more depth into the background there, and carefully putting water in areas that I want to put a little bit more color. And with my rigger brush, I'm just kind of flipping in some color in there to, I think I used ultramarine and a little bit of violet in the mix, just to give a little more depth. Continuing to add some grassy areas. And I realized I really want that dead tree to show up a little bit better in front of that grass, or that in front of that olivey green area. So I'm lifting some of the paint off so that it will show up a little bit. Same here, I'm just gonna lift some of the paint and blot it off. Same thing on the right hand side, lifting some of the paint, which you can do when it's transparent watercolor. Now I had lifted out some color for the trunks of the trees and added some more dark around them so that they stand out a little bit more. The sunlight is going to be catching some of the lightened areas, and so I add a little bit more warmth into the tree. And a little bit more of the gamboge into the tree. A little bit more warmth. So notice the coolness is on the left side of my painting and the warmth is on the right hand side. The watercolors I used in this painting are ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, alizarin crimson, permanent rose, sap green, burnt sienna, aureolin yellow, and new gamboge. With this exercise in painting, I wanted to be able to show you how to get a warm sky, put some of that warmth in the trees, and also have a background that's more in the misty background so that it's not so perfect. You don't need to have everything perfectly spelled out to know that those are supposed to be trees in the background, but it's your painting, so do what makes you happy, and as long as you like it, you're good. You don't have to worry about anybody else. It's your painting. You do what you want to do with it. Just keep painting. Remember to pull off your tape away from your painting. If you pull it towards your painting, you'll rip your work. And so you just pull it off away from the piece that you've worked on. Misty morning on the mountains. Thanks for watching, and keep painting. Happy painting.